it was like basically stunt marketing. Like he would do wild and crazy things, and I like that a lot. I like that approach. It seemed to fit what I like to do, so I just sort of adopted that same sort of approach.
And I want a good show, damn it. Ready for a good show?
Doing awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you, Angie. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
I've always been really big into archery, and my dad said, "Hey, you guys want to start an archery store?"
That's how it works.
Yes, of course, let's do this together.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the E-Comm Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the E-Comm Show. I'm your host, Andrew Maff, as always. And today I'm joined by the amazing Sam Corbeil, who is the Brewmaster and co-founder over at Sawdust City Brewing. Sam, how you doing, buddy? You ready for a good show?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me today. This is real fun. Love doing this stuff. So let's get down to it and start talking about sawdust.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you on the show. I'm a big brewery guy. I think I'm at probably one or two at least every weekend. And it was very interesting for us to kind of explore this because we do a lot of work with what we refer to as like restricted brands. So brands where it's kind of like there's certain things you can't do online, like advertising and stuff like that. And so it's always a very interesting market. And so to be able to talk to you today to kind of dig a little bit deeper into that is awesome. So I always like to start these off in the very kind of stereotypical manner and just kind of give you a second here. Let us know about like how you got started, where you've been, how you got into sawdust, and we'll let it take it from there. Okay.
Well, I started my brewing adventure way back in 2006. After a trip to Brussels with my wife and some friends, I decided that after attending a beer festival there that I enjoyed beer a lot more than I did my current job, which was working in an ad agency. So I left that and went to Germany to learn how to make beer. Came back in 2007, started working at Magnata, and then moved on to Robert Simpson, which is now Flying Monkeys. And then from there was at Mill Street during some pretty strong, expansive years there. Huge growth. Craft beer was just kicking off. That was about 2009 or 2008 to 2011 ish, and then from there, sawdust all the way out since then. So it's been 14 years here. We just had our 10th anniversary at this physical location this past weekend.
Oh, congratulations! What so getting into the brewery business is obviously very interesting. Selling the beer online, which I definitely want to talk about in a second here, but the getting into the business in itself. Tell me a little bit about like the struggle of being able to stand out. I know locally it's one thing because you become like a landmark, but to be able to scale past that, how do you foresee that approach?
For us, the biggest thing that, a lot of times timing is always very important. And when we started, we were like, when I came back in 2006, there was only 35 breweries in all of Canada. And then by the time we started, there was still way less than 100. And now we're at almost 400. So we had a whole lot less competition back in 2011 when we were first burgeoning and beginning our. And a lot of what I did was just try to talk louder than everybody else. I borrowed a lot of stuff from breweries in the States where it was all about being bigger, bolder, just brasher than the guy beside you, and that was sort of our ethos at the time. We were just having fun, making big beers, being as loud as we could, and then the beer market matured, and so did we along the way. We still do a lot of that stuff. There's 400 other people out there, so we sort of shifted away from being a little bit, let's say we were immature at the time, to being a little bit more about quality focused and just talking about our product more than just being loud. And over those intervening 13, 14 years, we've proven that we have good quality and we stick to that. And, one of our mottos is we don't take ourselves seriously, but we take our beer real seriously. And like, that's sort of what we live by. That's our ethos here.
So, the CPG space is really challenging, right? Because like typically, we'll have someone on the show. They created, let's just stick to drinks for a second. They created some drink. They created a website, got a little bit of traction. Then they go retail. They start looking at distributors, etc. In the brewery business, it's kind of the opposite, right? You start off more or less on the retail side, and then you look for distributors to pretty much distribute locally. And then obviously in your direction now where you're starting to sell online. So similar approach, just kind of flip-flopped. How do you kind of overcome that issue of people trying the beer? Because obviously coming into Sawdust is self-explanatory, but being able to get it into the hands of people that haven't visited before.
I mean, one of the things that was great about those early years in, the 2010s and as we moved from there was a lot of craft beer festivals. So I literally just went everywhere. Wherever I could, I would travel to beer festivals and attend those and try to make as big a splash as I could at those festivals, which is where that sort of bold brashness came from. And then from there, we did, those first few years, what we did is we go to bars, we do tap takeovers, we'd have chef's dinners, anything that we could at those beer bars. And then we really focused on just being in those really niche beer environments, which allowed us to establish a lot of relationships, which we still hold today. Again, timing is a lot of things, and it was very important that we got in when we did, because as it allowed us to get from there. Then we moved to the LCBO, and being at the LCBO for this long, at this point, we seem like a brand that's been around. It sounds silly that 14 years is a long time, but it is in craft beer years. Like we're like OGs. Like you go back, like I said before, there was less than 100. Now there's 400. So there's a lot of new people still coming up that have to go through all that again, fighting against 400 people when we didn't have to. We had way less to go against. But that's really the only way you could do it, was in every format. And we were talking about this, like how we got to selling online. Another opportunity was there was these, prior to being able to buy online, there was these brew boxes that you could buy, these mail order, online available brew boxes that were catered and sent beer of the month. It was a beer of the month club, like a cheese of the month club, but it was very early days in this mail order beer stuff. And we took advantage of like everything. We swung at everything that we could to make sure that we got that product out there. So we started, before online sales or e-commerce, it was just these beer of the month club things. So we started there, and slowly, as those, in Ontario, we had some pretty draconian rules about how things are sold. And as those eased up, we were on the front lines getting into e-commerce and selling online, which we had set up. We were one of the first breweries in Ontario to set it up prior to the pandemic. So we had this all lined up years in advance. So like you said, getting your hands, how do you get it in the hands of people? Any which way we could.
So the food and beverage space obviously is incredibly crowded, and the craft beer market, as you mentioned, over the past 10 years, especially here in the States, and it sounds like also in Canada, is like, it's ridiculous. I think there's like 15 breweries within probably like a 10-minute drive of me right now, which might be how I picked this home. But so like your point of, you don't take yourself seriously, but you take the beer seriously. So you take your product seriously, which is fantastic. How do you position it so that you actually stand out from all the other beers, right? Because if you've got 400 breweries across Canada, everyone's probably making a good, 10 plus beers at any given time. You can only kind of, splice a recipe so many different ways until you start to get a little creative and you start adding in different flavors and all this kind of stuff. So like, what's been your approach from a product perspective to help it stand out?
So at the beginning, it was doing those wild and crazy things. And like, when I was in that beer school in Germany, I was reading Sam Calagione's book, brewing up a business and his autobiography
Mm-hmm.
and how, it was like basically stunt marketing. Like he would do
Yeah.
wild and crazy things. And I liked that a lot. I liked that approach. It seemed to fit what I like to do. So I just sort of adopted that same sort of approach. And we did these crazy beers, and we had a beer called Long Dark Voyage to Uranus, which, sort of stuck us out here. Like, in Ontario, we're pretty conservative people. We're not that loud. So having these different names and crazy things going on at the time was pretty new in the craft beer world in Ontario. So it allowed us to separate ourselves. And then we continued to do that for a while. We'd have these names that were really long and drawn out, and then we'd go do these tap takeovers, and we'd have 30 different beers, and people, like, this was all very new. Now, if you take, we're say 5-10 years behind what the States were doing. So there was always like this, I could look to the US where these things were happening and sort of see things and borrow some ideas. And we were excited and drawn by this huge craft beer scene. We'd go to the craft brewers conferences in the States, and we'd be witness to, like, everything seemed bigger and bolder. So, like, why can't this be in Ontario? We have the ability to do this, so let's just do it. Yeah. So our separation was through those big wild. We did some beers that we went out to the forest and we foraged for wild yeast, and we had wild beers, and just seemed to, this caught the eye of the CBC, and we ended up on a podcast in the CBC, and we were able to do this. It just seemed that we lucked out with, when we put ourselves out there, something happened, and we were able to take advantage of that and grow our name that way. And at the time, as everything was blowing up, we just sort of happened to luckily be there. And now, as we've matured as a company and the craft brewing sort of industry here in Ontario has matured, we've able to settle into that sort of like elder statesman role, kind of. Mm-hmm. Here's our Lone Pine IPA, which has been around, it's a standard, it's a West Coast style IPA, which is now not as popular because everything's hazy. As it went down, like as Westies went down, that brand actually came up because it became one of the only ones available to everybody all the time. So we've been able to cultivate that and just sort of create that. This brand has been around now for this long, and it's an old standard, and that's how now we've separated it that way. Yeah. And we have to keep, we're not so big that we can't shift, and it's being nimble and being able to sort of see those ups and downs in the industry and where we can fit ourselves in.
It is very interesting because I'd never really thought about it that way, but like, you get the trends of, IPAs, and then for a while there was like the doubles and the triples, and there were like the super strong beers, and now, like, to your point, like it's the hazies, and I'm like, sometimes I go to a brewery and I'm like, can I just get what I enjoy, I've had for years, and they don't have it anymore because like, no, everyone drinks this now. I'd be like, not me. So like I understand, having kind of the standards and sticking to them. So that does kind of bring me to like the online space, because I know like obviously some of the standards available there and all that stuff. So what made you finally start to go online? How did it work out in the beginning? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
So prior to like 2017, I don't think we were able to sell online beer in Ontario. It was not anything that was available to breweries. You could do it, like I said, through those beer boxes. But as the rules lightened up, 2018, we started to set up a beer club where you could sign up for a subscription, and you would get 2 different beers every month through the calendar year. And we sort of set that up. And then I remember it was New Year's Day. Maybe it was New Year's Day 2018. Maybe that's what I'm getting at. And I was talking to our marketing guy at the time. I'm like, what if we just did a beer a week for the year to see how many people would sign up by able to give them something brand new every week for the entirety of the next year, which would have been 2019, I guess. And he's like, all right, let's do it. So we set up this thing. We call it the 52 pickup. And it was like each beer was a card, so you could collect 52. It just works out that 52 pickup, and there's 52 weeks in a year. So there was like a little card on the bottom of every label. And we had 52 beers that we lined up through the year to make and produce and release, to see how many people we could get on for the subscription and build our online presence that way. And it worked. We did it. It was an absolutely crazy year in terms of like learning about, product sell through and then building back, like having too much inventory before the next product comes along. We learned a lot. We learned mostly that we shouldn't do 52 different beers in a year. Like standalone beers. Like I understand some breweries will release a beer a week, but a lot of times it's just a new version of a beer that they did and they say that's a different one. These were 52 standalone different beers with labels, names, and the product life cycle wasn't enough for this thing to give enough room to breathe and live and expand. So a lot of those never came back. Some of them did, and we had some cheat codes in there. We had a bunch of like can conditioned beers that we would do like barrel aged stuff that we sort of set aside leading into it. So if we ever had a year where a beer wasn't ready or a week that a beer wasn't ready, we could pull out this product that had already been packaged that we were just aging and be like, bam, okay, we have this one that gives us at least another week for that beer to be ready that we weren't quite ready for. But 52, it also put a lot of pressure on the marketing people to come up with labels, timing, like it was bonkers. And it worked though. So we, built that up and, looking back at it, that timing couldn't have been more perfect because just coming out of 2019, it wasn't too soon into 2020 where COVID hits and no one could go buy beer. And we're like, hey, we're already set up online, order online, and we'll deliver right to your house. So that allowed us to take advantage of that right away. And that's sort of where it peaked for the next year and a bit. But then as people started going back out, the online stuff, and we just couldn't keep up that 52.
It's a cool idea, but I was like that could be tough.
Yeah, and then like we were backing up on product, so you'd have like you'd have your sale velocity would peak at a week or two, and that would be it. And then you're like, how do you? Now we got another new beer. How does that old beer? How do we move through it?
Yeah,
it was difficult. We signed up a lot of people for the subscription, but not nearly enough to make up for that difference.
Yeah.
So it was kind of the Wild West. This was all still very new in Ontario, so we didn't have a lot of information to go on. It was the new shiny thing, so people could sign up online and get right to the door. And then as that was happening, it was also finding a trustworthy supplier to get that product out. So we tried some different delivery services. At the beginning, we ate the cost of delivery, which we quickly learned was not sustainable. No. And then we went through a phase where we would use the Canada Post, but then they wouldn't, if you weren't there, they wouldn't leave the beer at your front door. You had to sign for it. And if you didn't, you had to drive now to the post office to get it. So that wasn't fulfilling like beer to your front door. Then we signed up with another company that they were great until like everybody joined and they didn't have the capacity to continue. Orders started getting dropped and missed. So then, we've gone through a number of different delivery services and now there's a larger fee to it. So unless you're from a far-flung place, online isn't as accessible. People are back to their normal buying, going out and visiting breweries, which is sort of why you set them up in the first place. But it's been a fun ride, and we've had some exciting times with the e-commerce sort of world, and we're still riding it. It's just not as big as it was, and we have to find the next way to get back to it.
Well, I mean, to your point of the 52 pickup idea, like that's a very fun, interesting way to do e-commerce, especially for a brewery, right? Because like, yeah, you have the flagship stuff, and if I want to have it and I don't have it near me, I might place that order, but it's probably few and far between. But having that like experience of something new every week or anything like that is very interesting. Now, the other thing I feel like you could do to kind of reduce some of that would be to keep the same concept, but maybe you just ship it like once a month, but they get 4 or 5 of them at a time. And so they're all different. It reduce how frequently you're shipping stuff out. It would reduce, you still have to do 52 of them, which still sounds like a challenge, but like is that kind of like subscription, like experience model still what you guys are trying to explore and expand on?
Oh yeah, we still have that, and we do like it was 52, but you would only get it at the end of the month. So you got a box. You could do the 3, 6, or 12-month experience. And what we would hope is like we really push it at Christmas time.
Oh yeah.
Hey, get your uncle, your aunt, whoever in your family is beer box subscription, and then after 3 months they like it, they can re-up or 6, or they re-up or they don't. A lot of the subscription base that we have now are still people that have done it every year. And each month, like I'll write a newsletter, I'll put in a little blurb about each beer. They get stickers. They're part of a club. We also put a glass in every year. So when you sign up, you get that year's version of the glass. And the glass is always different every year. One year we had a fancy glass. The next year we have a pint glass. Next year we had a sleeve. The next year we did a small glass where we're like, you know what? It's for sharing beers. Let's shrink it up. But they get different glasses and it's branded. And it, gives you part of that exclusive club feeling. We've tried all that stuff. We're still in that space. This year we did a little bit more. We went back to some beers that we put in our vault that had been sort of aging for a while. And we've sort of put some in there. Like you're the only ones getting this. This isn't available to anybody else but you guys. So there's that exclusivity back to it. All sort of gonna get them into that feeling like the beer club is special and they're part of something unique. We send them. We had you got a keychain that you could put on and say I'm a Sawdust City Beer Club member and all that stuff. And it is fun and we still like to do it. I just feel like that it's kind of like that sort of online has waned a bit as people go back to just visiting breweries and buying the product that they can get here. Unless we're 200 kilometers from Toronto. So if you don't want to drive here, we can get it to you in 48 hours and it's at your door. You want beer for the weekend? Call us on Wednesday. It goes out Thursday. It's at your house Friday afternoon. And there you go.
I mean, look, to your point, it's, ever since, let's say, pretty much post 2021, as COVID really started to kind of dwindle and everyone went back to normal, the e-commerce space went a little bit, while a lot of people got used to shopping online again, the e-commerce space really did go back to its old roots of you've got to provide an experience. It's got to be something fun. It's got to be something cool. Otherwise, they can go up the road and get it right away. So there's got to be kind of that pull in. Now it sounds like, between the experience that you're providing and the exclusivity element of it, you're hitting all the marks. So the fact of the direction that it's going and it's just consistently testing and figuring out what it is people like and adjusting from there. But yeah, I mean, dude, Sam, this was awesome. I really appreciate having you on the show. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you got some awesome beers to make. So I'd love to give the opportunity to let everyone know where they can find out more about you and, of course, more about Sawdust.
Well, you can go to sawdustcitybeer.com. Check us out online. We're on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. Actually, I don't know if we're on TikTok. I just said that, but I don't know. I've never been on TikTok. I'm almost 50-year-old white guy. I don't have any idea what TikTok is. But I know we're on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and you can always find us here in Muskoka, Ontario, Gravenhurst, and pop by the brewery and all the cool beer bars across the province.
Beautiful.
Come by. We'd love to see you here.
Yeah. Sam, appreciate it. Thanks for being on the show.
Cheers.
Obviously, everyone that tuned in, thank you as well. Please make sure you do the usual rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff on whichever podcast platform you prefer, or head over to ecommshow.com to check out all of our previous episodes. But as usual, thank you all for joining us. We'll see you all next time. Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in to the E-Comm Show. Head over to ecommshow.com to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on the BlueTuskr YouTube channel. The E-Comm Show is brought to you by BlueTuskr, a full-service digital marketing company specifically for e-commerce sellers looking to accelerate their growth. Go to BlueTuskr.com now for more information. Make sure to tune in next week for another amazing episode of The E-Comm Show.